For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California?
As the member designated by Ms. Custer from New Hampshire, pursuant to H Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Custer will vote aye on the previous question on House Resolution 1028.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Bonnie Watson Coleman pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Watson will vote yea on HRes 1028.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. As the member designated by the Honorable James Langevin, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Langevin will vote yes on ordering the previous question on HRes 1028. Thank you.
Rising rapidly. Dr. Fauci, based on now, how many COVID-19 infections should America expect before this is all over?
I can't make an accurate prediction, but it is going to be very disturbing. I will guarantee you that, because when you have an outbreak in one part of the country, even though in other parts of the country they're doing well, they made that point very clearly last week at a press conference. We can't just focus on those areas that are having the surge. It puts the entire country at risk. We are now having 40,000+ new cases a day. I would not be surprised if we're 100,000 a day if this does not turn around, and so I am very concerned.
Can you make any kind of estimate on what we're looking at?
我哋今日咧都懷住好激動嘅心情咧，係大家都出席咗同埋列席咗今次人大常委會第20通過咗港區嘅國安法。有咗國安法之後，能夠令到香港 社會穩定，一國兩制能夠順利，另外國家安全唔會受到破壞。香港啦，我哋一定要齊心協力。當前我哋無論喺經濟同埋疫情雙重打擊底下，我哋一定要克服困難，大家重新協力，恢復，令到經濟迅速能夠恢復翻出去。11點鐘呢，就嗰個《國安法》嘅條文已經出咗嚟，都睇過或者都了解過。我自己覺得咧，呢個法例呢，都係考慮咗喺一國兩制嘅情況底下，亦都係照顧咗香港嘅實際，亦都係針對咗喺就算兩個唔同嘅法區，內地同香港但係同嘅情況底下呢，都能夠呢係，我覺得個法例都係做得相當之唔錯咁就可以起到一個防範、制止同埋懲治嘅作用。希望啲人唔好以身試法。希望香港從此可以穩定，唔好再有黑暴嘅事件發生，分裂、勾結外國勢力、組織恐怖活動呢啲嘅事情發生。希望令到我哋香港市民個個能夠安居樂業。睇下阿朱姐有咩講？
香港基本法委員會咧係同意將國安法咧係列入基本法嘅附件3裏邊，喺香港咧可以公布實施。呢個法律咧有6方面嘅部分。第一咧，佢明確咗訂定國安法同埋咧係設立呢個維護國家安全嘅機制，中央嘅事權唔屬於香港嘅高度自治權。咁樣本身咧有個憲制上嘅責任咧係要配合同埋遵守。第二點咧，好重要嘅原則就係基本法第39條裏邊2個國際公約適用於香港嘅部分係繼續有效，保障香港人嘅人權同埋自由，同埋普通法面對受嫌人一般嘅保障咧都係完全都係存在嘅。第三咧就係我哋本來個法律體制裏邊咧有好大嘅漏，令到香港受到好大嘅傷害，就係正如頭先講，分裂國家、顛覆國家政權、從事組織恐怖活動嘅行為或者咧活動，同埋咧係勾結外國或者外力干預香港事務。最近嘅時候，我哋睇到咧對香港嘅損害係相當大，所以咧係必須要咧係防範、制止同埋防範為先。咁第三個情況，頭先講到第4個情況咧，就係香港本身咧喺行政立法咧係作出相應嘅安排，使到呢個法律咧可以喺香港咧係執行。然之後第5個咧就係中央亦都會喺香港咧係設立一個公署，作為係執行呢個維護國安法嘅一個機制。咁最後一點呢，係雖然呢個呢係完全係中央嘅事，但係個法律呢係主要份權力同埋責任呢係俾咗香港特別行政區，只係保留3個好少絕少有，但係必須要守住底線嘅情況之下呢，係中央會行使佢嘅司法管轄權。最後一點呢，我亦響應譚耀宗常委嘅講法，法律咧係冇逆及力，大家收手，愛惜香港，唔好再做傷害香港嘅行為。我哋大家合香港一國兩制可以重歸正軌。多謝。
今一次呢，我哋同9個即係一共10個港區嘅全國人一齊獲得邀請，去出席列席呢個常委會嘅會議，一齊咧去見證一個咁重要嘅法例嘅制定嘅過程。可以咁講，我哋嘅心情咧都係非常之激動。而我自己咧 仲記得17年前，特區政提出過一個國家安全法，由於種種原因呢，係受到咗可以立到呢條法例。事實上，國家安全係牽涉到每一個國民嘅整體嘅安全，亦都係每一個國民，即係每一個中國人、每一個香港人都應該有嘅責任。咁好可惜喺過去一段時間，我哋係冇辦法落實，香港亦都唔能夠咧履行呢一個所謂憲制嘅責任。咁喺過去從呢個佔中運動嘅開始，逐漸就主義嘅主張，而呢一種咁嘅主張同埋思潮呢，更加喺去年嘅反修例嘅一個社會嘅風暴裏邊呢，係大家睇到出現咗好多嘅暴力嘅場面，好多嘅財物受到破壞，好多嘅市民受到威嚇，已經係一個好嚴重嘅國家安全嘅現狀。中央政府喺睇到咁樣嘅情況，必須要考慮如何去繼續落實好、支持好一國兩制呢一個咁重要嘅政策，亦都係考慮到香港700萬市民嘅福祉，所以佢哋決定咗係要行呢個立法，係幫香港自己自身做唔到嘅一個事情。我哋必須要理解到呢，其實喺過去嗰1年裏邊呢，中央政府要面對好多嘅挑戰，包括嚟自外國嘅貿易戰、科技戰，而過去嗰半年仲要面對一個好重嘅人民戰爭。喺面對咁大嘅挑戰嘅同時呢，中央政府都能夠騰出手嚟，好認真咁花時間、花精力，為香港嘅國家安全得到維護呢，係用制定呢一條法例嘅目的，都係希望能夠保障到一國兩制能夠行穩致遠，保障到香港市民嘅幸福，亦都係保證到香港呢係未來能夠得到繼續發展，市民呢個生活呢係唔受到好大嘅干擾。事實上，如果冇一季，咁所以呢一個咁嘅情況呢，係大家都非常關注嘅。係10位嘅港區全國人都能夠有咁嘅機會去見證呢一個歷史嘅時刻。咁我哋係由呢一日開始，由呢個法例開始實施之後呢，香港係能夠回歸到社會安寧，我哋能夠喺一個穩定嘅情況裏邊呢，重新出發，去發展我哋嘅經濟，去落實保障我哋嘅民生。而喺呢一日開始，所有嘅特別係年青人，唔好再受人唆擺、受人煽動去做一啲違法嘅事情，亦都係呢自己呢去身處呢個風險之中，可能會違反法律。亦都要正告所有嗰啲躲喺背後去煽動、去組織安全嘅一啲行動同埋希望佢哋能夠意識到覺今時而作非，收手讓香港可以回歸寧靜，大家呢可以重新出發去建設香港。多謝，
唔該晒。
即係例如即係已經開始會有即係國安法係而家已經實施緊，咁聽日都會有啲人去發起一啲遊行啦。咁其實見到條文列明啦，咁同埋包括一啲破壞交通等嘅行為啦。咁而家嚟講就係用一個即係刑事毀壞或者係非法集結去控告。咁其實喺聽日嗰個情況嚟講，究竟係用申報主義去控告啊，定係用翻而家或現有嘅法例去控告咧？
朱姐你想講？
首先咧，搭推測性嘅問題咧係難嘅。第二咧就係睇下發生嘅係咩事，因為要去到恐怖活動，佢係有組織。不但如此，佢係要嚴重嘅，佢係嚴重咁傷或者係公共設施，令到香港人咧係覺得受控，唔係個別嘅刑毀嘅問題。
不過任何嘅非法行為呢，就即係你如果以身試法，自己要小心嚇。至於執法部門或者檢控部門用邊個法例、邊條法例嚟檢控呢？俾執法部門同檢控部門去做啦嚇。
即係 即係警務處都會有執法啦咁樣。咁其實公署啲人其實而家到齊未？因為而家都已經通知。
唔清楚，你要佢如果有咩，佢就自然會去介紹。暫時我唔清楚，因為個法例先係啱生效
條例嘅主要都係由香港特區嘅行政區有個空期，
好似有個空期咁啊，而家未有。
我相信咧，所有啲行動即係個法例都寫得好清楚嘅，都仍然係保障翻香港市民有嘅集會啦，各個方面嘅自由。咁只要大家呢係守法依法，譬如話要集會，我哋都有原來嘅法例，譬如話去申請得到即係警務處嘅可。咁咪去做咯，咁一啲問題都冇，就千祈唔好去做一啲違法嘅行為，特別唔好做一啲破壞性嘅行為。咁做咧就可能會承擔一定嘅風險，要面對一個可能出現嘅制裁。
第一樣咧，想問翻咧，即係點解官方其實咁夜先，即係如果呢個時間咁夜先出到，其實係咪代表香港人已經即係冇晒一個角色或者話語權咧？第二樣咧，想問翻咧，針對住嗰3個大項啦，有嗰個管轄權啦，中央嘅行使管轄，香港嘅律師即係討論上面有冇講過話，可唔可以代理審理一啲嘅案件咧？同埋係咪即係咁樣代表，即係特區政府覺得有困難啦，就即刻就將嗰個疑犯就可以送去內地嗰度受審咧？第三就想問翻咧，頭先講到駐港公署即使成員嘅名單未知啦，但係而家就話執行職務嘅時候唔受香港管轄啦，咁係咪代表係唔會受到香港法律嘅管制咧？同埋國安罪行咧，而家就話會剝奪政治嗰啲參選權等等，而家冇講年期，係咪代表終身剝奪政治權利咧？唔該。
你一口氣你講咗咁多，我問得嘅我本來着個問題去解釋下就可能會方便啲
出嗰個時間先啦，即係而家11點。
出嗰個時間呢，因為呢個係全國性法例但係呢，亦都係按照基本法咧擺喺附件香港呢，同時係會生效嘅，其實係人大常委會去決定咁所以兩邊一齊去公佈咁解啫咁第二個問題係咩啊？
第二個問題就係即係嗰個管轄權啊，即係如果執
管轄權嗰度呢，你有冇睇過有3個條件嘅，即係3種嘅極端情況底下，特首或者出嚟做中央批准嘅唔係話好輕率去做呢樣嘢嘅所以唔使。係咪
可以去即係？
應該係可以嘅個法例我嘅記憶都好似有寫到係呢方面或者處長有補充
一位人士被拘留嘅一刻鐘開始咧，佢已經可以請律師，香港律師又好，內地律師又好，都可以。
都可以嘅法律輔助係有嘅可以安排。
我自己嘅體會咧，即係今一次呢個法例嘅中央政府都係非常信任香港原有嘅體制、原有嘅架構啦，所以佢係都高度咁依賴特區政府去執行呢個法例，亦都係好大程度咧係尊重翻兩地嘅差異。香港譬如實行普通法一種咁嘅制度咁同埋咧即係佢都做咗好多嘅功能，希望咧係俾到香港人咧有一個安心嘅所以我覺得係即係中央政府有好大嘅誠意咧，係用好呢條法例，係讓佢咧係發揮正面嘅作用。
但係咧嗰個維護國家安全公署咧，佢喺即係香港執行任務或者一啲執行職務嘅時候咧，係唔受特區政府，咁係咪即係唔受香港嘅法律管轄？咁香港人點樣可以放心咧？即係唔到佢哋執行嘅行為或者職務嘅行為啊？
公署嘅攻守中國法律，亦要遵守香港嘅法律。只係佢喺範圍裏邊履職範圍做事嘅時候，係香港法律唔可以管，一樣要跟翻佢哋本來制度裏邊之下所有對佢嘅牽制同埋限制。
咁但係香港人好似監察唔到佢哋咁樣，即係譬如佢好似話佢哋即係佢哋國家安全委員會作出嘅決定係不受司法覆核，即係好似唔能夠挑戰咁樣，即係監察唔到。
佢嘅履職行為咧係做嘅，咁佢咧係派駐嚟呢度咧，係佢有一套法律管嘅，咁佢一定要跟住嗰個法律做。如果唔係履職行為咧，咁佢一定要跟香港嘅法律，佢亦有中國嘅法律。
政治權利影響嗰個選舉嗰個資格方面係變期嘅就變。
佢呢度係暫時未有寫個年期
咁其實係咪即係代表即係終身剝奪？
又未
佢冇講過。
我嘅理解咧，即係嗰個所謂政治權利咧，權利裏邊嘅參選嘅權，就唔係所有嘅政治權利，有好多方面嘅。 咁另外一個呢，即係我哋而家過去實踐嘅就係，譬如話我哋真正參選人，佢係過唔到選舉主任提出嘅質詢，或者佢嘅即係佢嘅承諾係咪能夠兌現？咁我覺得呢一個咁嘅情況呢，其實嗰個主動權反為係喺個參選人身上，或者說服到嗰個執行嗰個選舉條例嘅官員嗰個詢問或者嗰個信任嘅話呢，佢係仍然可以嘅喎。咁呢個所以嗰個主動權其實喺嗰個參選人嗰度。你明唔明我嘅意思啊？
我明。另外都想補充一個，即係今次而家有個煽動啦，即係喺個聯團入邊。咁其實係咪即係等於即係內地嘅煽動顛覆國家政權罪？即係呢個煽動嘅演繹可唔可以咁解釋？
我諗你而家呢個港區嘅國安法呢個條例去解釋嚇，就唔係。如果係咁咧，我哋唔使咁專門成立啲法例啦，我哋將內地嗰個搬過嚟咪得咯，係咪？咁所以咧就應該你應該係睇翻而家個法例講咩嘢嚇，就從呢個法例嗰度去嚟。
好唔好？聽下問就係即係上一次其實你落機嘅時候都問過啦，就話其實都會跟翻即係嗰個終審權，終審法院有嗰個終審，即係有個解釋法律嘅權力。咁想問翻，即係而家最終嘅法例其實都冇提過話終審法院有任何嘅解釋權。而家終審法院仲有冇對呢個條文有呢個解釋權咧？
按照翻基本法158嗰度嚟處理咯。
但係佢冇列明，因為佢比較特殊少少，就即係附件3亦都冇經過。
如果唔係可以引用基本法158啦嚇。咁但係你知道咧，法咧係人大常委會制定，按照憲法咧立法嘅解釋權嚇，個解釋權係喺人大常委會裏邊嚇。OK， 好嘛 ，OK， 唔該晒，唔該晒。
因為條文咧講，即係經過你懷疑涉及危害即係國家安全嘅犯罪人員，就可以進行一啲嘅監聽或者一啲秘密監察啦。擔唔擔心會對香港人有一啲嘅白色恐怖喺度？
應該唔會嘅，即係我相信特首做嘢都應該係好謹慎、好小心嘅嚇。
但係咧，佢話如果咧嗰個法官咧，即係佢侵入國家安全，就會終止佢個法官嗰個資格，係咪有少少即係損害咗嗰個司法？會，
佢再終止，即係佢以後就唔去處理嗰啲國家安全嗰啲嘅案件啫嘛嚇。咁因為佢都要揾一啲適合嘅法官嚟就呢啲關於國家安全嘅案件，咁佢就係個任命權就係行政長官。如果發覺佢呢個法官喺審理嘅時候，原來講嗰啲説話或者有啲嘢行為係發覺係唔適合嘅，可以就以後就唔叫佢去做呢啲嘅案件啦，就係咁。咁呢個都合理啦，因為發覺佢唔適合咯，咁咪唔需要佢去。但係你需知道唔係三權分立嘅問題，不嬲咧法官都係由行政長官嚇，咁所以咧一路以嚟基本法都係咁嘅安排嘅，所以唔出現有啲即係唔關注呢個問題。而且而家咧亦都加咗咧，如果行政長官任命嘅時候咧，都可以去諮詢終審法院首席法官嘅意見嚇，咁亦都接受咗大家嘅意見㗎啦嚇，好嘛？唔該晒。
And who's not.
I was trying to emphasize that we're working in partnership with CMS, which has that regulatory oversight. And we're there to continue to reinforce the guidance as you and we think we do have to get everyone screened in these nursing. Unfortunately, we still think that we need to keep it from the homes right now, particularly in areas with high jurisdictions. But the regulatory function of this is CMS, but we are really meeting with them daily to see what more we can do to try to ensure that there's greater compliance.
I thank you for that. People are looking to the CDC for not only very clear and granular guidelines, and you've heard that all throughout the questioning, but particularly in long-term care facilities, there's a lot more work to be done, and we are not getting usable personal protective equipment all the time either. Let me go to another question and with you. We've heard discussion about the difference in the effectiveness of measures taken, for instance, in Europe. This is a graph that shows the disparity between new confirmed cases per million residents over the previous 7 days between the United States, Europe, Canada, and Japan. The disparity is eye-popping. Surveys that mask wearing in the United States occurs less frequently than in Europe. You and our witnesses have been very clear on the importance of mask wearing in public places. Do you attribute the improvements in Europe to more widespread use of masks, or are there also other specific government policies or individual behavioral differences that you believe should be incorporated into our national strategy?
It's certainly masks play a role, but there are a number of other multifaceted things in each of those very disturbing graphs that you show. Yeah. One of the things that became clear, when we shut down, in reality, only about 50% of the nation shut down with regard to other things that were allowed. In many of the European countries, 95% of all activities were shut down. So that is one of the reasons why you saw, particularly in Italy, which shut down to a much greater extent than we did, the cases came way down in a sharp curve downward and then stayed. So it's not only the fact that the countries in Europe and the other countries had a much more uniform response. We're a very heterogeneous country, and we had a heterogeneous response depending whether you are in the Northeast, Southern, West, or what have you. So there's a number of other factors, probably some that we still don't even understand.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to move on to just one other issue, and it's really just to urge Dr. Redfield, CDC, to issue additional guidance for killer on reopening. I understand that you are continuing to do that. That the CDC has released FAQ, frequently asked questions documents on things like which provide more concrete, useful information for families, and I'm hoping that you'll do the same kind of FAQ documents for parents and teachers that directly address practical questions and concerns about school reopening plans, simply like what happens, what should a school do specifically if one or two positives come up in a classroom or in a teacher? What should parents and teacher administrations to do? So we can follow up with that, the chair's indulgence.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Senator Braun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two sets of questions, and I'd like for Dr. Fauci and Redfield to give about a minute each to the first. I want to get the broad numbers. I think, Dr. Redfield, you might have been on record. There's 10 times as many cases out there, and I know that's a guess. I'd like to know, because if that's in the fatality rate, it goes from 5% down to 0.5%, 20 times as many cases, of course, 2.5 down to 0.25. What is start with you, Dr. Redfield, how many cases you think we actually have out there? And then how many vaccinations and herd immunity combinations as a percentage of our total population do we need to get to for this thing to be in the rearview mirror? So we got a few big numbers to kind of relate the journey ahead.
Thank you very much, Senator. We now know that this virus began to really states in March. And in between March and May, we've been able to do antibody testing, and that's what how many people were really infected. So during that period, it was our best estimate about 10 to 1. Over 20 million, 22 million Americans have been infected. Assume that's the same ratio now in June and July going forward.
It's more than that?
No, I think it's going to be less because we're doing more and more testing, okay? But it gives us a good idea. The extent of infection was more in March, April, and May. Not 2 million individuals, but more closer to 20 million individuals.
What is your opinion of how many individuals we need vaccinated and/or having herd immunity? This thing goes into the rearview mirror.
Yeah, Tony may comment on that too. It's really got to be over 70% of the population. It's got to be immunity and the impact of herd immunity.
Dr. Fauci.
I totally agree. Given the transmissibility, which is highly efficient, you're going to need somewhere between 70 and 85%. I would say 70 at the lowest.
Okay. Second set of questions would be on the issue of herd immunity, because, of course, we've got we don't know how long it's going to take to have an effective vaccine. And I'm guessing when you're talking about herd, it's got to actually confer immunity if you get it, and there might be some uncertainty to get the immunity. What is the, how do we go about the approaches that we've used to this point? Is herd immunity going to be something that you think will march through if we take the strategy of having a different approach for younger people that seem to have hospitalization rates and less significant consequences? Because I think that's another thing we need to know, because I think that's already going to be done by each individual in a way as they size up their own personal risks. So how much can we count on herd immunity?
I can answer quickly and then turn it to Tony. I think it's important to realize even now we're probably looking at somewhere between 5 and 8% of the American public has experienced this virus. So for me, herd immunity as a basic strategy, you're talking about a multi-year strategy. This is why it's so important that the alternative strategy is a biological in the development of a vaccine.
One of the issues that I don't think it's going to be something that is going to be any kind of a show. Realized, and as Senator Paul said, we have to be humble and know there's a lot we don't, and what we don't know is what the durability is. In other words, so if you wind up getting herd immunity to 75, 80%, what we need to learn, and only time will teach us this, immunity lasts. Is it a year, 2, 3, 4, or is it even less? Is it no? When we find out, then that will inform us as to whether or not if you get a vaccine, how often you need to boost it. So we have to realize we don't really know the answer to your question in any definitive way.
At least that gives some clarity, some parameters to live within. Senator Hassan stressed the point of protecting the most vulnerable, because to me, the one thing it looks like we can certainly do is to take that highest risk group from the data we've already got and build, in essence, an iron dome around them as the one thing that would seem to be the most important thing to do where you get certain results. It has to be in place as the uncertainty, immunity, and when we get an effective vaccine actually converge.
I might add, we always think about herd immunity with regard to natural infection and or vaccination. But when you want to talk about protecting the vulnerable, we want to see if some of the other programs that are more prophylactic treatment programs, like of plasma or monoclonal antibodies or hyperimmune globulin, those are some of the things that you can do to protect the vulnerable until we do get an effective vaccine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Braun. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Chair Alexander, Ranking Member Murray. It's good to see all of you today, and thank you again to our panelists. So we need robust surveillance and occupational testing if we are going to safely reopen our economy and our schools, our nursing homes, and our group homes to make sure that they're not a conduit for infection. And we're seeing this. This is in New York State, where employees in nursing homes are required to get a COVID test twice a week. So here's the problem if you're a worker. Who pays for that test? Is it my employer? Is it my private insurance, if I have insurance? Or do I have to pay for it out of my pocket? I'm thinking about that low-wage worker working in child processing or maybe as a security worker or a janitor. And the average cost of a test is somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 to $150, though there are reports of people being charged over $6,000 to be tested, assuming you can find a test. So this is my first question. Last week, I posted guidance on this question, and the guidance plans are not required to cover the full costs of tests for surveillance or occupational reason. The federal testing plan, which talks about the value of certain occupational testing, is silent on this. So let me ask you, Dr. Fauci, do you agree that we are going to be better able to contain the spread of COVID-19 and save lives, have surveillance testing?
No doubt surveillance testing is going to be a very important part of the program to understand not only the current penetration of the virus in society, but where it's going. Short answer to your question is it's going to be very important in our public health measure.
And would not also the or the ability to pay for these tests be a pretty significant barrier to having that surveillance happen?
I think common sense tells you that if people cannot pay for it, they're not going to do it. And that's one of the reasons why we got to figure out how we can do it without having the stress of people who can't afford it to be part of that process.
Of course, you know, the worry, of course, is that this ability to pay for these surveillance tests for this kind of thing that could really tend to exacerbate underlying a lot of frontline workers and essential workers who don't have the privilege of working from home are much more likely to be Black and brown and indigenous people, people of color. Isn't that right?
As in all cases, that people who are economically not able to engage in some of the things that benefit others, they always, in general, get a short end of the stick on that, and that's what we have to be concerned about.
Right, right. Well, colleagues, I think this is a really important place where we have the potential to work together to make sure that as we expand surveillance testing and occupational testing, as we look at our schools, our higher institutions of higher education coming back, that we have the ability to do this and that the ability to pay for that test isn't a barrier. Chair Alexander, you mentioned this, my colleagues have mentioned this, and I think this is a place where we could work together in a constructive way. I want to ask Jen specifically related to vaccines, because there's been a lot of discussion about this, a lot of discussion about how we can make sure that people trust these vaccines, that they are, that they work, and that the long as potential negative side effects, we understand those. So let me just ask, maybe I'll ask you again, how do we trust a vaccine that has only had a short number of months potentially being tested?
There are a couple of ways to overcome that. A large number of people in the trial. The trials that we're talking about, 1,000 people in the trial, and maybe even more in some of them. You can get a considerable amount of safety data, but then there's a process, you know, after a vaccine maybe would show efficacy to do further studies following licensure availability. Dr. Hahn maybe comment on that more, because that becomes something very much involves authority in making sure we do have safe vaccines. So, Steve?
Let me just, if I could maybe put a finer point on this question for you, Dr. Hahn. I mean, what if a manufacturer were to say that they could get a vaccine to market in January, only if they were released from liability? What's the FDA policy on that? How would you resolve that question?
Thank you, Senator. We would not get into the issue of liability for an individual sponsor. And what we would do, and that's why we released the guidance this morning, is we would ensure that our normal regulatory approach and our standards for safety and efficacy are met. So while
you would not release a manufacturer from liability?
An FDA authority that we would use.
And how do you guard against
Senator Smith, we're running a little late. Go ahead with your question, but let's.
Hopefully this will be an easy one. I mean, what I'm worried about is that there's some sort of October surprise, and that there is a pressure put on the decision makers here to announce a vaccine in October of 2020. Dr. Hahn, can you just tell us how we can have transparency so that people can see that isn't happening?
Senator Smith, a very good, important, and leads to the issue of public confidence. It's why we released our guidance today. We want to be clear about what the standards and the data that we'll need to make a decision and what factors go into those decisions. I want the American people to hear me when I say we will use the science and data from those trials, ensure that our high levels of standards for safety and efficacy are met.
Senator Smith. Senator Loeffler.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Sorry I can't be there in person. I wanted to ask Dr. Redfield, can you outline what steps the CDC is taking to, look at for handling both the flu and COVID-19 season simultaneously this fall? I know the CDC to test that diagnoses both COVID-19 and the flu, but what other activities is the agency engaged in? And are there any novel approaches you see in terms of implementing this? Would love to hear about the agency's process for approaching the season this fall and thoughts there.
Thank you very much, Senator. I think it's really important to recognize that it is going to be difficult with flu and COVID this fall. First and foremost is to try to increase the American public's acceptance of flu vaccine, 50% accept it. We're working hard to begin to reach out, particularly to groups that have been underrepresented, to try to build that confidence in vaccination. We've worked with the manufacturers to see if they could boost the amount of vaccine that would be available. They've now increased their commitment to almost 189 million doses. CDC bought another 7.1 doses. Normally we buy about 500,000 to be able to be available to the states and local health departments for uninsured adults. We increased that 1 million doses. We've augmented our commitment to the children vaccine program, anticipating that there's going to be more children that will qualify in light of the unemployment. So those are some of the areas that we've begun to prepare for.
Thank you. Question is for Dr. Hahn. You know, the pandemic has exposed our vulnerabilities in the medical supply chain, and obviously we have a reliance on imports from countries like China. They pose a national security risk in the face of infectious disease. We need to come up with a strategy to boost our production here, both pharmaceuticals. I've introduced some legislation, the China Act, to offer incentives to companies that bring manufacturing back to the United States, but would like to hear from you what additional steps can policymakers take to boost our capability to produce these supplies and pharmaceuticals domestically.
Thank you, Senator Loeffler, and thank you for your leadership on this. I think one issue that is the lack of redundancy in the supply chain and the dependency that we've seen during the COVID-19 pandemic has been a problem. The agency's primary focus has been on instilling redundancy in the supply, particularly of pharmaceuticals, by diversifying that supply chain and really looking for opportunities to encourage domestic manufacturing. We, of course, on the regulations as well as regulations around the manufacturing specifications to pharmaceuticals and other medical products, we will continue to do that, particularly in the advanced manufacturing space, in order to encourage domestic manufacturing. We look forward very much to working with you and other members of Congress to see how we can create the proper incentives to have that redundancy, and particularly to have as much domestic manufacturing as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn. No further questions. I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Senator Loeffler. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate your testimony, your consistency over the last few months. It has got to be somewhat discouraging to all of you, as it is to us, to see these numbers. I want to kind of focus a little bit on schools, as opening schools up in Alabama in August. And let me give you a little chronology here. The state kind of began to open up its economy more in May, a little bit more toward the end of May. And then for Memorial Day, photographs and videos that Dr. Fauci referred to with everybody just having a big time from a Memorial Day holiday. Now, at the end of June, we are at our highest levels. The last 14 days have shown over 10,000 cases, which is 28% of the cases that we have seen have occurred 14 days. At the end of this week, we have the July 4th holiday coming up. And we're going to see a delay in hospitalizations from right now. If we do the same thing on July 4th, we're going to have a huge problem at the end of July and early August when we start opening. State school superintendent this week said that it would cost about $1.8 million for the average school system to do those things necessary to try to protect kids and the faculty. But I heard Senator Paul in his comments and discussing to where you would get the impression that we could just open schools back up without spending any of that. So my question primarily to Dr. Fauci and Dr. Redfield, could you comment on some of the statistics and some things that you heard about children transmitting this disease and whether or not we need to spend some additional monies for our schools to do things like have extra PPE, to do things, potentially hiring additional health officer screenings, those kind of things. Are those going to be necessary based on what I've heard and what happened on his charts in other countries? Dr. Fauci and Dr. Redfield.
I'll quickly give it a shot and then hand it over to Dr. Redfield. We don't know precisely. I think the data that was very interesting that Senator Paul showed about school openings and not seeing any real obvious surge in cases is important, but we don't really know exactly what the efficiency of spread is. First of all, how many children get infected. That was the reason why in my opening statement I mentioned the study that we're doing at the NIH of 6,000 families looking at children, what is the rate of their infection and how often their families. Because if it's true that the rate is down, we know that they don't get seriously ill with hospitalizations when they get infected. But if the rate of infection is down and they don't readily transmit to their parents and family members, that's going to be very important in this process of opening schools. Hopefully, we're going to find that out reasonably soon by this study that we're doing. Bob?
I'd echo what Dr. Fauci said. CDC has a number of what we call household studies going on to try to get a better of how does the virus get into a household, who brings it in, what's in the household, how does transmission vary depending on how the household responds in terms of social distancing, et cetera. So there is information that we are gathering. I think we don't know the impact yet on the transmission cycle. So I think we should just acknowledge that. The greater threat, obviously, is, again, the children to the vulnerable, but I think one can actually have social behavior that can prevent that. So I think that would be just to emphasize. I think it's really important that we move forward and work to reopening schools in a safe way. I think it's of note that CDC never really recommended closing schools. It sort of just happened, as you know. We can do targeted school closings if we have to in a particular region, like we have diseases. But I think we really need to move forward now to how to reopen these schools safely.
All right. Thank you. Admiral Gerard, I want to make sure we're tuned in, and we've talked about it a little bit. Are we going to be able to make sure that we get vaccines distributed in the most vulnerable of communities, because that seems to be where so much and are you making specific plans to make sure that we get into the rural areas?
So thank you very much. So parts of this problem, right? So the CDC actually controls the distribution, but what my office does, running the National Vaccine Program, does things like the Morehouse cooperative agreement that we announced last week, that really reaches into Hispanic, into African American, to really have the people who are in that community not only link to services like testing, but to lay the groundwork for vaccine acceptance, because we know that the burden of disease is fundamentally burdened on these individuals. So these are the people, assuming the science works out, that we want to get vaccinated first.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Jones. We know the witnesses need to leave about 1, and we're going to try to respect that. Senator Rose.
Right. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we.
Well, good morning. I will try to quick as I can, talking about antibodies this morning. Thank you, Chairman Alexander, Ranking Member Murray, all of our witnesses for being here today. As our communities focus on how safely get back to work and school, just like we're all talking about, we know we have to follow the science and adapt to new information, ensure that we're making timely, targeted, and thoughtful decisions to protect both lives and livelihoods. So the last time you were here, we talked about the monoclonal antibody treatments, and I'd like to follow up on that conversation if we could. As we've learned more about the virus, how it functions, how it's different from other respiratory illnesses, what updates can you tell us about the development of preventative treatments that block the virus from attaching to the cells?
Well, thank you for you mentioned monoclonal antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies are going into trials, a number of trials sponsored by a number of groups. Hopefully, within a reasonable period of time, we'll get information as to whether or not that's effective, both in the prevention as well as in the treatment. Those antibodies are directed against a component virus that is what's called the spike protein, and that protein is the one that binds to the now well-established receptor in your body for the virus, and that's a receptor called ACE2. There are a number of other studies that are not necessarily antibody studies that have a effect on the virus itself and its initial replication. To a question that the chairman mentioned just a bit ago, is that there will be therapies that we will be giving, some for treatment early on and others for prophylaxis. We hope as we get into the fall and winter, we'll have small molecule treatments and prophylaxis to the kinds of antibody about. So there's a lot of activity going on to do that early in disease, both for and for the treatment of early disease.
I know that you've been doing a lot of serology testing and that individuals are presenting with antibodies. So out of the 5 types of antibodies that people are most likely to have, which ones do most recovers patients? Which ones do they show? And if one of these specific isn't, does that make a difference in if the patient can be reinfected or not, or effectively immune, at least for some period of time? What kind of answers does this have the presence of certain antibodies?
No, I'd love to give you a really precise, scientifically based answer, but the fact is, we don't know. Standard-wise, in an acute infection, you get an IgM antibody. As you go off in time and develop a more immune response, it becomes an IgG. There are subclasses that are more protective than others. The thing we don't know, Senator, that we will, but it's going to take time to know it, is what the relationship between the neutralizing antibody and binding antibodies that don't neutralize, what is the relationship between the titer of protection and what is the durability of protection? We've seen some puzzling things. We've seen people recover from COVID infection and find out they don't have very high levels of antibody. Could it be a cell-mediated response that got them through the illness? And some other individuals have very high levels, and we don't know how long those levels. So we're getting there with regard to our knowledge, but it is going to take several more months to a year to really be able to definitively answer your question about the role of antibodies in protection following natural infection.
Well, building upon that, I'd like to ask this question then. We know that this virus is multi-organ. It can affect your kidneys, your lungs, your heart, producing strokes, all kinds of things, your digestive system, your sense of smell. So on the science that you're talking about in the antibodies, science of stopping the virus from causing harm, the same regardless of which organ it attacks. How do we help direct funding for the kind of research that you're going to need to look at this multi-organ attack of this virus, if you will?
This is a very perplexing virus because it's a respiratory virus and it gets in through the respiratory tract. The virus stays in the respiratory tract and doesn't go systemic to involve other organs. That's good news because you don't get very sick. The other side of the coin is your antibody response is not as potent because when you get systemic involvement, invariably you will have a more potent and robust immune response. So probably the people who are the asymptomatic carriers, they have a reasonable titer of virus in their nasopharynx, but the virus doesn't go any other place in their body. People who get multi-system disease that get triggered by the virus, those are the ones that get more sick, but also the ones that make a more potent immune response.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here today.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Very interesting question. Senator Murray, do you have closing remarks?
I have one additional question, if I might, and then some closing remarks. I wanted to ask Admiral Giroir one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Despite some of the limited data, we do know that COVID-19 is infecting and killing Black, Latino, and Native American people at a much higher rate than white people. I ask you how HHS is going to adjust its response to reduce cases and deaths in community. Specifically, can you commit to redirect some of the $14 billion that funds Congress provided to address those disparities?
Let me answer the 2 parts of the question. First, as you know, and really appreciate your support, we've tried to focus our testing into high social vulnerability communities. So 70% of our over 600 pharmacy sites, high SVI communities. That means racial and ethnic minorities, language disparities, socioeconomic. FQHCs, we've made a mission that the federally qualified health centers that take care of 1 out of 3 of those in poverty, over 1,300 of those are now offering testing. And of course, we're super excited about the award to Morehouse School of Medicine last week that has a large coalition to create a national structure to reach minorities and underserved. So that's what we're really doing. And you know, my office, this is what we do on a daily basis, even without a pandemic. I don't commit the money. I certainly think investment in this area, continued significant investment in this area, that the 40 down payment on how we could best reach the underserved community, but you're going to have to talk to OMB about how the money is spent.
Oh, well, actually, HHS oversees that, so we will ask them, but I think that's an important question. I'll keep following up and tracking that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all of our witnesses taking the time to join us today to update our committee on the course of this, of our efforts to respond to it. I hope we will continue to have an opportunity to hear from all of you, as well as other key administration officials about this, because the absolute worst thing we could do right now is to pretend this crisis is when it is painfully obvious that is not true. The reality is that the losses so far are nearly unthinkable, and any further delays in our response is really unacceptable. We need to take this president to take this crisis seriously, and we need Congress to act. So I hope we can all get back to work as soon as possible. Families, our frontline workers, our businesses, our schools, our communities. We need to get testing where it needs to be. We need to make sure we are making progress towards a safe, effective, widely available vaccine. And we need to stick with the global community rather than cut them. So there's a lot left to do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Murray. I know our witnesses need to go too, so I'll abbreviate my remarks. But one thing I want to ask you, and perhaps you can each do it in a minute or less. I've put out a white paper in recognition of what some of you have said, which is that in between pandemics, we have found it difficult to do some of the things we need to do to prepare for the next pandemic. So if there were one or two things that you thought we should try to do in order to be prepared for the next pandemic, what would those one or two things be? Dr. Fauci.
One of the things that I would like to see is an appreciation on the part of our entire nation of the importance of responding as a nation as a, and not have a situation where when you have a challenge such as we have right now, we have very disparate responses. We've got to do it in a coordinated way because we are all in this together. The other thing I'd like to do now is to cement in our minds as we bridge to the future the fact that we cannot forget that what was thought to be unimaginable turned out to be the reality that we're facing right now. So it relates to that outbreaks happen, and you have to deal with them in a very aggressive way.
Dr. Redfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the most important thing that I could say is that when it comes to public health threats, our nation needs to be over-prepared. And as I mentioned before, investment in the core capabilities of public health, data modernization, laboratory resilience, workforce, emergency response, I think is fundamental. We've really been hit with this simple virus. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to cost our nation trillions of dollars. And I think that we have a moment in time where I think people are tuned, and I would say now's the time to make the necessary investment in our public health at the local, territorial, tribal, state, and federal level, so that this nation finally has the public health system not only that it needs, but that it deserves.
Admiral Giroir.
Completely with my colleagues, and we're all singing from the same hymnal here. I'll say three things. Number one, data infrastructure is really important. When we came into this, ventilators were in use, how many tests were out there, were the tests positive or negative, the complete soup to nuts infrastructure that we need to make decisions. You need those data to make decisions and to allocate resources. And now that we built this on the fly, but we absolutely have to invest in that. Secondly, I would say resiliency of the healthcare system. Yes, we need to attack COVID, but what happens to else? We've seen cancer screenings go down by 80%, childhood immunizations plummet. Just about every other thing in the healthcare system was sacrificed for our COVID response. So it's not just the pandemic response, but it's everything else we need to do. And the third thing I would say is I have to focus on health disparities. If everyone was healthier in this country, if we invested into those, to hypertension, diabetes, obesity, all the things that could bring you would not see as horrible of outcomes as we have in any pandemic. So working on health, been here for decades, is I think critical to raise our general health and prepare us for whatever's going to hit us.
Dr. Hahn, you can have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, on your white paper, I think that's really important to put this conversation forward. There are two things I want to emphasize. One is the data modernization, but from an FDA perspective, it's a very manual process to, number one, collect data on demand and also the supply chain. We need a very robust system to understand that. We also need a robust real-world evidence approach so that when we real time during an emergency, doctors do that all the time, agencies do that, particularly during public health emergencies, we have the appropriate data infrastructure to collect real-world evidence and feed back into our decisions and then revise those decisions as needed. Critically important for the agency. And the second, that is, to my previous comments that Senator Loeffler asked about, we absolutely need redundancy in the supply chain, we need redundancy in manufacturing, and we need to emphasize the importance of domestic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn. Well, the one thing that
I don't want people to assume that's the same ratio.
Processors with not only implementation of the specific guidance, but how we can cost. We do receive some benefit from the discretionary funds provided to the states, but I think we would all recognize, like the
travel restrictions can help or give you time. They can't fully prevent a disease from arriving here. And so even if we do turn the corner in the United States in a meaningful way, so long as this in large quantities outside of the United States, we are still vulnerable.
That's correct, sir.
And so, Dr. Red, what is your understanding of why the United States has not joined the global vaccine effort? Why are we not in something like CEPI, an organization that is working with other nations to try to coordinate not only the development of the vaccine, but also the distribution of the vaccine?
Well, I think the U.S. has obviously developed an aggressive, comprehensive program, but, Senator, it wouldn't preclude being part of these international organizations also, from my perspective.
We have legislation pending right now before the Foreign Relations would put the United States into these global vaccine efforts. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to many of us on both sides of the aisle as to why the Trump administration has not joined. And finally, Admiral, just maybe help us understand what our relationship with the WHO is today. The president declared that we were pulling out of the WHO. Not just that we were not going to fund it, but his announcement was actually we were going to sever our relationship with the WHO. You were confirmed to executive board. And so have you been recalled from the WHO? Are you attending meetings? Are you participating? What are the details surrounding our withdrawal from the WHO, which, by the way, is maybe one of the most dangerous things, in my opinion, that the administration has done in the middle of a global pandemic. What's our status and what's your status as a confirmed member of that board?
So I really do appreciate the confirmation. I was confirmed on May 7th, and I did attend the executive board 2nd. The executive board, it was virtual, participate and support our multilateral commitments. I have not been recalled. I have not been given any direction to recall myself in any way. There would be another executive board meeting probably in October. And I believe all of us on our public health standards still work with the WHO as a WHO partner. For example, we participated with the global sickle cell meeting just 2 days ago. So we certainly work from the public health aspects, direction on the official, whether we're going to be a member or whether I'm not going to go to the executive board. I have not gotten that direction yet.
Okay, thank you. The announcement was that we're terminating our relationship with the WHO, so probably some additional clarification would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. Senator Murkowski.
Chairman and gentlemen, thank you for not only but all that you have been doing. I think I've had conversations with each one of you about the Alaska-specific issues, most notably with regards to our seafood. This is the time of year where we typically welcome tourists as well as many thousands that come from the lower 48 and other places to help with our seafood processing. And it has been a very anxious time, I think, for all of us in Alaska as we see outsiders coming in. We have seen obviously elevated cases of confirmed. Our numbers, I think, when other states look at us to know that we're working about 500 active cases right now, about double that in terms of what we have seen throughout this whole pandemic. But again, we know, and you have stated, that we don't have resources that look to neighboring states. We're kind of on our own island there in terms of resourcing. So what you have done to help facilitate, whether it's the plan, food processors, the guidance, the ability to come in on an as needed if the situation so demands, we appreciate that. We have seen the benefit of how these very rigorous plans have worked. An individual to work in a seafood processing facility is tested before they come to the state. They're tested when they get to the state. They're put in a 14-day quarantine. We have seen positive cases once people, but we've been able to do what the plan calls for, which is that contact tracing and then isolation and keeping things to a minimum. So I think it does demonstrate that these tough plans really, they are expensive, though. If you are bringing in several hundred or perhaps 1,000 workers and you have to put them up in a hotel for 14 days with pay, when you have to provide for the health protocols, this is cost. I would ask for your input, and probably a question for the record, just in terms of which agencies can facilitate these seafood processors with not only implementation of this, but how we can be dealing with the costs. We do receive some benefit from the discretionary funds provided to the state.
HK people 8 return to Hong Kong.